Now, just for the sake of argument, though, it doesn't matter whether we agree or disagree. They were wrong. They have no place in the Constitution to do that. It's a states' rights issue solely, as guaranteed by the Constitution. Anything not enumerated in Articles 1, 2, and 3 are reserved for the states and we the people. The Constitution is clear. Our founders were clear. It's time we start holding our elected officials accountable for upholding the Constitution. Now, I'll give them credit for Congress. They passed a bill. I don't think it went anywhere, unfortunately, but they did pass it out of Congress, that you could not introduce legislation without citing your constitutional authority. That's the minimum that ought to happen. I was proud of that. I was ranked by the Goldwater Institute, which looks at constitutional issues, as the #1 legislator in defense of freedom and the Constitution. Time after time. I'm proud of that rating. And looking out for you, the taxpayer, Arab Americans for Prosperity. I was always one of the top, and usually the #1 for defending the taxpayer. I understand the proper role of government. I believe it has to live within those restraints. Our founders were very smart. They knew that men who gained positions of authority would exercise unrighteous dominion. They knew they would exercise authority they didn't have. The Constitution was to chain them down. It was to chain them down for mischief. And they weren't worried just about bad guys. They were worried about good guys doing bad things with good intentions. And that's the danger. We've gotten to where we're at. This mess, in most cases, people who sincerely believe they're doing good stuff. They're destroying this republic and its founding principles. I don't know that it'll ever be passed, but I wrote a new platform for the Republican Party and sent it to them to review, and it's simply returning to the founders' Constitution. Very specific in terms of what it does and those limitations on government. And this party is the party of the Constitution. The majority of our folks believe in that. The problem is we elect folks who disappoint us, and then we re-elect them after they disappoint us. You know, it's like I was talking to one of the, I won't name names to protect the guilty, but I was talking to one of the candidates here about 2 years ago, and he was telling me how conservative he is. I said, I have no doubt about that. You are right now. It's a primary. Are you going to be a conservative after the primary? I mean, they always are a conservative during the primary. Build the darn fence. Haven't heard that since. I'm sure I'll hear it again now that we're running for office again. You know, but how many times are you going to let them lie to us? Tear our Constitution apart. Ignore the people. We're overtaxed. We're overregulated. We've got laws that ought not to be in the books. You know, there's a lot of criminal law that is well meant, and most of it probably necessary. On a state level, we have the authority to do that. But many of those issues should be civil, not criminal. Unless there's a culpability, a mens rea is referred to, a criminal intent, you don't belong being charged criminally for something that's an accident. That's why we have civil court. And we need to be careful about that. I'm all for putting bad guys in jail. Trust me. There are bad guys out there that don't belong on the streets. And that's why we have laws. The laws will protect you from guys that are bad, that will do bad things to you. But how many times are we going to tolerate that? But sometimes I think the laws are abused. And I was talking to a county attorney here a while back, and I said, you know, in Arizona, we have truth in sentencing. I love truth in sentencing. It's discriminate sentencing instead of indiscriminate sentencing. We used to be, just like I watched an episode the other day, rehashing. I don't remember, well, you guys, if you've been here for many years, you probably remember the Tyson gang. Vicious. Murdered a family of 5, a little 2-year-old baby, shot it in the head with a shotgun. Vicious, vicious scum. I remember that case very, very well. So I was rewatching it, and boy, I believe in the death penalty. And if I had my way, and I'm teasing a little bit here because justice is important. But if I had my way, there'd be an oak tree at the edge of town, and every police car would be required to have a rope in it. You know, there's just some people you hate to spend all the years and years of appeals and sit on death row and nothing happens to these kinds of folks. But we are a nation of laws, and I believe in the law, and I believe in due process. The last thing we want is a good guy going away for something they didn't do or didn't have a culpability of doing it, a mens rea, a criminal intent. But folks, we've got some of the best laws in the nation in Arizona. We've worked hard at them. We've got some good legislators down there. We have some that have an R in front of their name. I'm not sure they're in the right party. They have voted for Obamacare, called Medicaid expansion. They voted for a Common Core. They voted to raise taxes. They have voted, again, time and time again, some of them are still there. They have voted for Napolitano's budgets, you know, ruling the legislature, spending money they didn't have, increasing debt they didn't have right to increase. Anyway, there's some new studies out. Kind of jump around a little bit, but there's some new studies out on the cost of immigration. How many of you have an idea of what just one illegal alien costs you? $750,000 is what an illegal alien will cost you when they come here young and grow up here. $750,000 net cost. That's after giving credit for contributions they may or may not make. $750,000. FAIR did a study. In Arizona, the cost of illegal immigration on an annual basis, yearly, $2.6 billion just to educate, medicate, and incarcerate. That does not count the victims. That does not count job loss to Americans. That's just for those three categories, $2.6 billion. So I'm going to jump again, and I go there for a reason. I want to tell you about the cost and the impact besides the crime. You know, after we passed employer sanctions in 1070, and again, the people tell you they don't commit disproportionate crime. First of all, they're all criminals. They broke the law when they came here. But secondly, ignoring that fact, they commit disproportionate crime. A study that I helped do with Andy Thomas, Maricopa County Jail, they commit violent crimes 2.7 times more than any other demographic. When we passed employer sanction, we passed 1070, and again, they fled the state of Arizona. The Arizona Republic was mad because that goes to the subscription to La Voz. It's another newspaper they own, and that really hurt their subscription. But they admitted 100 to 150,000 left the state of Arizona. You know, property crimes dropped 46%. Auto theft dropped 47%. Homicides dropped 50%. Chief Harris of the Phoenix Police Department had a press release, and his press release is about, we've had a tremendous reduction in crime, but I don't know why. I thought, that's interesting. We're going to have a press release about the reduction in crime, but at least not even going to lie a little bit about it and take credit. I at least was proud of that, you know. Unlike some other chiefs, one we had here in Mesa, that took credit for that reduction, but nothing had changed. Phoenix PD, Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, put out a press release, which I loved. It was after Chief Harris did that, because they had such a love with Chief Harris, as they tried to run him out of town several times. But anyway, the largest law enforcement association in Arizona, put out a press release, and they said, because of SB 1070, we have a 30-year low in crime. And they said, not because we've done anything different. We have 600 police vacancies, same old policies, same old strategies, solely because of SB 1070. I don't remember seeing that in the Arizona Republic, but they actually put out a press release and sent it to everybody. And they said we had no complaints for profiling, for racial discrimination, not one single complaint with all that reduction in crime. They said 1070 because it gave us the tools to do it, even though they admit, personally as we talk, that they started leaving before 1070 was ever in effect. They were leaving by droves. Had an attorney in town here that blamed me for the economic disaster in Mesa, personally. I said, well, I wish that was true. I said, I'd love to take credit for it, but I said, you know, I don't think that's quite true. But I said, because the impact they have, the net cost is much greater than any of the net contributions. Because first of all, the Barron's magazine put out a report here a while back on the underground workforce. $350 billion a year, and that was 12 years ago, lost due to the underground workforce non-payment of taxes because they're paid under the table. There's so much ill to it. Besides, and I know we all have a heart, and we all love our children, our grandchildren, we love our neighbor, but we know right and wrong. And you cannot tolerate. There are 3 billion people worse off in this country than Mexico or Latin America. I mean, thank you, sir. Probably more than you wanted. You're wishing you hadn't fixed that, aren't you? But anyway, we know right from wrong. And I want to make it clear, I am not a hateful guy. I have never been a hateful guy. I've talked to these groups, and I've tried to be pleasant. I've had, but they on the other side have been a little less than nice and polite. They've marched on me down at the Capitol time and time again with rude and nasty signs, boots on my head, foul language. They've threatened me personally. They've threatened my family. Bobby, the director of DPS, just recently left. Now you got a new director. But anyway, Bobby called me several times, and he says, I just need to put people outside of your house, Russell. I said, you're not going to put, I live in a little tiny house. I've got wonderful neighbors. I mean, there's no place for you to hide, you know. And my wife won't tolerate it. I won't try, Bobby. I said, you can't do it. And he said, you don't understand. These are really bad guys. We've got intelligence. We've got stuff. They really are out there. I said, Bobby, I appreciate that. But I said, I'm an old guy. I mow my yard, my .40 caliber on. I said, you know, let them come. Let them come. I mean, I'm not running from these people. No matter what you do, I'm not running from it. And he was good. And without my permission, 2 guys showed up one night. Now, my neighbors had a good time. Richard Martinez and his family, and I'm sure you got to know Richard Martinez, one of the best neighbors I've ever had, just a wonderful guy. So anyway, his daughter was over visiting and stuff, so she had pictures taken with the 2 DPS guys they'd just come from a detail, so they had their SWAT stuff on. It looked pretty bad. Yeah, bad in terms of awesome, the kids' term bad. And so anyway, so they had pictures taken with her, and they had a great time, but I sent them home. I said, you're not going to be here. Guys, I don't want you here. I mean, love you guys, but you got to go. I said, call me later, I'll take you to lunch, but you got to go. Can't hang around my house. But they've been less than nice, and they've been very threatening at times. And my wife has probably paid the price greater than me because it bothers spouses more than it does us. But I'm a lucky guy. In fact, the Lord's left me here for a reason. A lot of people need to be irritated. And I'm pretty good at it. Hopefully in a nice way, doing the right thing. But I suppose our founders irritated a lot of people too when they were so insistent on getting King George's boot off their throat. So insistent you're not coming into our house and taking our guns, which they started to do. So insistent to get rid of the tyrannical government. You got to be vigilant. And I tell you, I am lucky. And I speak to my brother back there, Lester's in the back, and my sister Kathy, and I appreciate them coming. I know they've got better things to do than hear me. They hear me rant all the time. But anyway, I've been very lucky in my life. I've had a lot of challenges in life, and you know, Lester was with me one time, and I ran over up in between Snowflake and Taylor. Roger Willis, good guy. That night, I didn't know who he was, but I got to know him later. Ran over me. I was on a horse, and he hit me going about 70 miles an hour. And I was very lucky. I landed about 60 feet or so from the horse. Still had my boots on and the bridles in my hand. And a couple of our cousins were there, both named Claudette. One we referred to as Claudia, and the other one Claudette. You know, one was a Hatch, and one was, I don't remember the other one's last name. Hatch was our cousin, so it's easy to remember. So anyway, but they're screaming and yelling because they're sure I'm dead. And they come walking up because the only thing that hurt on me was where I hit the road. I was bruised. You know, really hit pretty hard. You know, but the truck missed me. I mean, broke the truck in half. You know, the engine went into the cab. The horse was hurt really bad. The truck landed off on the side of the road. I mean, I don't know why I wasn't hurt any worse, but I'm very lucky. It felt good. And I've had a stroke, and I've had a heart attack. I was shot in the chest and had a finger shot off in law enforcement. And I again, some of you heard the story, but I always brag about this one. Do you know the story about Republicans, right? They have no heart, right? Well, I'm grateful as a Republican. If I had had a heart, I'd be dead. I went right here. Yeah, 357 Magnum went all the way through, so I feel pretty fortunate, and I've always stayed with this party as a result of that. I owe my life to this Republican Party. But I've been very lucky all my life. I've had a lot of challenges in life, good challenges, though. I'm very blessed with a sweet wife and 5 children. I've got 18 grandchildren, and I feel very blessed. I also feel very, very obligated. I know this republic was created for a reason. I know our obligation. And like Reuben J. Clark, one of my heroes in life too, besides our founders, like he said, if you ever lose freedom, you will only get it back by the shedding of blood. Folks, I hope we don't get to that point. But I am ready if it comes to that. I pray that we can turn this country around the right way. But I will defend freedom at whatever cost it takes. I will defend the freedom of my children and my grandchildren, and your children and your grandchildren. It doesn't matter a lot to me. I'm an old guy. But it matters a lot to those that I love, and to the nation I love, and to our posterity. And I will do what necessary to defend that. Now, we could go on, and it's easy to go on. I've got lots of material here I brought. I always carry it. It's kind of like Linus in his blanket. I never follow it, but I bring it. I just feel better if I bring it up and sit at the table. It's like old cars. I love old cars. I don't have to own them, but sometimes if I can just go there and kind of lean on them, I feel better. I go to Home Depot. I don't buy a lot of tools, but I can pull up a lawn chair and sit by the tools for an hour or two. I go home, I feel better. It's therapeutic. So... But anyway, let's open up for questions. Anything you'd like to ask? Yes, ma'am.
What are you doing with all the other illegal aliens that are coming up from South America, mainly from the Middle East?
And the coyote in chief who's transporting them around the country? Just a real quick story. I was coming home from work the other day, about a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, and I'm pulling off the freeway, you know, all that construction on the 202, and I pull off on Country Club. And I see this green and white car along the side of the road. Well, I said, boy, it looks like a Border Patrol car. I get a little closer. It's a Border Patrol car. But I don't see anybody in the driver's seat. And I look in the back, but there's a couple of kids in the back. I know they didn't bring it. They're a little young. Teenagers probably, so impossible, I guess. But anyway, and then I look down the street, and I see this Border Patrol agent walking down the street with a red gas can. So I flip around you know, and I go and I said, what's going on? He said, oh, I ran out of gas, he said. And I said, well, let's get some gas in that car and stuff. Well, we tried to put gas in the car, she wouldn't start. He didn't run out of gas, it broke. But the reason is he drove that car too far. He was ordered to bring these kids from New Mexico to Mesa, Arizona, and drop them off at a house. Illegal aliens from Honduras. He was frustrated. This young kid was born in Mexico. An American citizen, though. Came here, earned it, served in the military. After being a citizen, they don't, all this business of illegal aliens serving in the military, they're not allowed to. But he got his citizenship or permanent status and, you know, was here legally and did serve in the military. Great young man. Family won't talk to him. Think he's a traitor. Breaks his heart. But he loves this country and he knows it's right. And he was venting with me about this. This is every week, he says. He said, last week we transported 65 of them to different places in the country. That's just from our little, and we're a small border patrol facility. 65 of them last week. Said 2 of the families we got airline tickets for and flew them to Tennessee. Said it's a daily event. He said, I don't work the border anymore. I'm a transporter around the country for illegal aliens. That's just one small facility. So what's happening? And go to my website, russellpearce.com. There's a petition there. Remember when Governor was running in the primary? There wasn't a debate that went on that he didn't say, I will use every resource available to me to secure the border and enforce the law. Kind of like building the darn fence. I have not heard it since. I have a petition on my website asking the governor to keep all of his promises, and I lay out his resources and his authority to do that. Do you know that? Do you know we can secure the border? Everybody talks about it's a federal border. We actually can secure it. Under Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution, when the federal government fails to do their job, and Article 4, Section 4 requires the federal government to secure the border and protect the states from invasion. Article 1, Section 10 says when they don't, the states may do it. There is no lack of authority. No lack of authority. It's time they stand up and protect Americans, American jobs, and the rule of law. Hey, oh, yeah, did you hear that? He said he has it's a son, relative, who's a Phoenix police officer who works West Phoenix, and 70% of his arrests are illegal aliens. I know that. In fact, I work with plea. I work with law enforcement. When we were passing 1070, before, because I knew it'd be a challenge, I ran 1070 in 05, 06, 07, 08, 09, and 2010 before I got it to a governor who would sign it. You know, but in doing that, I had 9 out of 15 sheriffs endorse it. Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, Arizona Police Association represent 34 agencies endorsed it. Yet you'd think that I was the only guy pushing this. I went around the state and laid out that all it does, you already have the authority, it just takes off illegal handcuffs that are placed on you. Law enforcement loved it for that very argument. I would get story after story, especially from Phoenix, about stopping cars, and because their policy wouldn't let them arrest them or even ask the questions, teardrops on their eyes, known gang members, know they're illegal. Interrogation to let them go. Time after time after time. They were fed up and frustrated. And they were great source in getting this law passed, came down to the Arizona legislature and testified in behalf of 1070. I owe a plea a great deal of things. They were vigilant on this issue. Joe. Well, Joe, we know that. They know the system well. They come here, they get food stamps, they get government housing. It's all illegal technically under federal law, and it's illegal under state law. But we know they're doing it. 71% of those in this country illegally are on welfare. Actually, I think they were 71% of immigrant families. They didn't differentiate between legal and illegal that were on some form of public assistance. It's wrong. We know it's wrong. It's immoral. But just to deal with your issue, do you know if the sanctuary policies had been eliminated, had the laws been enforced, 9/11 would not have happened? Do you know four of the hijackers, four of the pilots, the main guys were stopped by law enforcement and let go, were in the country illegally, had overstayed visas, but they were here illegally. One of them still had the citation in the glove box of his car that was abandoned at the airport. Had they been arrested and deported, 9/11 would have been averted. 3,000 people, more than we lost at Pearl Harbor, would have been saved. Well, as long as they, we're letting in a lot of folks legally, so it's hard to just pick out a race. I don't care who you are, it has to be legal, and they need to be vetted. We ought not to be letting in people that are at risk. That was one of the criteria. That's why we had Ellis Island. You had to come here, you had to be vetted. You had to have no disease. You had to be able to take care of yourself. They made visits to your house. Let me tell you a quick story. And we got a lot of questions. I don't want to cut you off of this. I was sitting having lunch just Tuesday, and I'm sitting in this little Thai restaurant, little tiny place, and this guy walks up to me, a little bit of a German accent, not bad, and he says, "You're Senator Pearce." I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And you never know if they're going to be nice or be really upset. But most people are like what we've done. They understand. But I get a few that don't. And so anyway, he thanked me, he shook my hand, and gave me some great stories. He said, "I love what you've done." He said, "I worked hard. I spent thousands of dollars to come here. I didn't come here for welfare and food stamps." He said, I'm well off in my country. I had a big house. I came here for freedom. He said, when they let me in, he said, they came to my house, wanted to know if I had my own bathroom, wanted to know if I had my own bedroom, wanted to know, he said, they went through everything. He said, they visited me. He came here years and years ago. He said, I was afraid they wouldn't let me come. He said, but I was well off. I promised them, I'll never take a penny that I don't earn. I don't want Americans' money. I just want your freedom. I want to be an American. And he told me, and he said, born in Germany. He said, I'm not a German. He says, I'm an American. And he said, I don't let people use hyphenated words with me. I have German ancestors, I have a German heritage, but I'm an American, only an American. It was a great conversation. It was good for the heart, and I really appreciate it. Those kinds of folks have made America great. What's happening today is destroying the very country we love. Yes, sir.
Is this. Our university are producing a generation of liberals. Our courts are legislating from the bench. What do you suggest in terms of saving our generation? My son, even people my age who are totally clueless in regarding to the media brainwashing.
Well, $64,000 question. He basically what he said is, we got a university producing liberals, the millennials. We got education, sending our kids to the left. What do we do to save America? That's kind of what I was trying to get to the whole time I'm up here. We have to start electing those who understand the principles of freedom and liberty, are willing to sacrifice for it, are willing to vote right no matter what the pressure is. Right now we have a Congress that is controlled by the lobbyists on K Street. Money talks. First of all, there's a lot of things we do. First of all, take the money away from them, repeal the 16th Amendment. Restore the balance of power, eliminate the 17th Amendment. where there were the senators who were sent there to represent the state and defend the states against the federal government. Today, again, it's like Ted Cruz says, you know, the fight is against the Washington cartel. I mean, this is a gang down there we call them Congress, but it's gang activity, you know, and so you got to start by putting the right people there. I'll tell you now, I have 2 U.S. senators that represent Arizona that'll never have my vote for anything, They have violated every piece of trust I could have given them when they were sent there. Promises they had no intention of keeping, siding against the rule of law, throwing America under the bus. And it's been a long list, not just 1 or 2 issues. My vote is not for sale, and those folks will never have my vote again.
Cartel that you're talking about, or the cabal inside the Beltway, isn't just inside the Beltway. It's nationwide. I was at an LD meeting last night that ran amok because of evil people in my legislative district that would not adhere to the rule of law.
That's sad, and we know we have them in our party. We're not 80% of our party, I believe, are solid conservatives. They're grassroots, and they've had their heart broke time and time again. And that's the point we'll take, and that's why it starts with our younger generation. If you guys have grandchildren, and you have children, if you know, like me, my children are not young anymore, you know, but they have children that are growing up, and I've tried to teach them principles of freedom and about the Constitution. But you ought to have a night where you take once a month, once a week, call your kids together and spend some time on the Constitution. There's some great videos. There's some great books. Just tell an inspiring story. Tell them about the Star Spangled Banner and how it came to be. Tell them about the miracle that happened in the old South Church in Boston. Tell them about some of these miracles. Do you guys know that story about what happened with Reverend Pearce in Boston? Yeah, just a wonderful story, a true story again. You know, they were a tough time. This was before the Revolutionary War, about 1740s. 1746 to be specific. Yeah. And so anyway, what was happening is the French wars over. What was happening is the French fleet was coming, and their mission was to destroy every city on the coast. Well, almost all of the Americans were on the coast. They had all settled those coastal cities, so they were lined up. So if they took out all those cities, you wouldn't have an America today. It'd be gone. And their mission was to level it, destroy it. And as they're coming forward, and they knew they were coming forward, the governor of Massachusetts, probably wouldn't hear it today, asked for them to take a day of fasting and prayer. I think it's actually 2 days of fasting and prayer. And after that was over, Reverend Pearce, Thomas Pearce, called his congregation together. And a man of choice words, and I'll paraphrase, I won't get it exact. But as he's telling them, he's praying, he says, "Oh God of mercy," he said, "have mercy on us, kill our enemies, destroy those frigates, sink those ships." And this was a pretty clear, beautiful day, I understand. And as he's praying, the dark clouds rolled in. A hurricane hit of devastating impact, sank most of them. The ones that they didn't sink limped back to France. Not a shot was fired. God had his hand in the making of this America. Miracle after miracle after miracle occurred. We're a chosen people, a chosen nation. We have an obligation to preserve and protect it at all costs. And how do you save America? Oh, what a great question. I wish I had a very simple answer. But it starts with teaching our children and our grandchildren, electing the right people, have the courage, give them a constitutional quiz, make sure they know what their job is. And again, hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. Joe's got her Common Core book out there. Yeah, you know, I mean, again, the Common Core is unconstitutional, illegal. Medicaid expansion of Obamacare is unconstitutional, illegal. I mean, we can go down the list, and I went through some of them. Folks, we've got a country to save, and it's not going to be easy. We've been led down this path. You know, it's frog in the water. You know, the heat's been turned up. We've allowed this to creep didn't happen overnight. It won't be fixed overnight. But if we don't start now, we may never have a chance to fix it. And that's why I appreciate Shane on the road constantly, preaching the importance of the Constitution. The Constitution, like Shane says, is not the problem. It is the solution. Yes, ma'am. One more question, then I think Shane looks like he's pulling out the hook.
I want to go back to the license, the driver's license. If illegals are issued a driver's license and corrected, okay, are they going to be able to vote in our federal election coming up, even though they're illegal?
Okay, her question is, because licenses are being issued to illegal aliens, is that going to actually give them authority to vote? No, it does not give them the authority, but it makes it easier for them to commit fraud. There's laws against voting if you're not legally a legal citizen and a legal resident. The law is specific. So if prosecution needs to take place, they've got to know that. And I've told this, by the way, to several folks. They need to, now that this is going on and they're issuing the license, which is illegal, the governor has no business issuing those. Again, Arizona license, not a national license. We decide who gets a license, not the federal government or some judge. But they're doing it. They've caved, and they're doing it. So DACA are doing it. But one of the things they can do, still they're required to have verifiable identification. So if they can't prove they are who they say they are, they still should not be getting a license. But I don't know how vigilant they even are on that. But there are laws against it. So you got, they still can't vote legally, no matter what. But the condition under the law makes we assume that you're legal if you have a driver's license issued after August of 1996. Because that's when we put in the legal presence standard in Arizona and verifiable ID. You had to prove your citizenship before you could get, or at least legally present, before you get a driver's license or an ID. I was told they're going to put it in. I haven't seen one, and I'm not sure they did that. But I was told they were going to. I've raised a whole lot of noise about it because, first of all, it shouldn't have done it. Secondly, anybody that's not a citizen, even if you're legally, it ought to say non-citizen on your license. And it's not a bad thing to say it. We just know you're not a citizen because there's certain rights that are available to citizens that are not available to even folks that are legally in this country. That clarification ought to be made. But anyway, I'm not sure they're doing it. Yes, sir. One more, Shane? Okay.
Would you read the question?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Just real quick. And I'll just kind of paraphrase, but you said it well. And I've ran into a lot of this where I have a lot of ministers and pastors, and actually most of them are misrepresenting themselves. There's a group called something faith. Interfaith. Thank you. Well, I tell you, when they leave here, I'm going to just write my wife's name down so when they get home I don't make a mistake there. But anyway, this group called Interfaith, they talk about being members of all kinds of church and organizations. We vetted several of them. Simply, they say what they say without any foundation. They've never been known by that congregation. They never have been there. But they run around using the facade of a religious interfaith organization. Their whole purpose, and they were created, was to promote illegal immigration. And they're against border security. They've fought every bill we've ever passed. They've come in groups. They've been thrown out of the legislature on 2 separate occasions because they're so loud and noisy and radical and disrespectful. But anyway, but there are nice folks who come down there occasionally too that think that if love thy brother means we ignore the law. Folks, we love the sinner, but we hate the sin. There is not a higher law than obeying constitutional law. Like James Mattis said, if it's not constitutional, it's not a law at all. But if it's constitutional, we have an obligation to obey it. And we don't have a right to break the law. And there is no exception in the law for compassion based on religious beliefs or religious foundation. Sanctuary churches are in violation of the law. When these people hide in their church, the minister should go to jail. Anybody aiding and abetting them should go to jail. The folks that are leading their parades downtown should go to jail. It is a felony to aid or abet or encourage in any way to help, harbor, and promote an illegal alien from standing in the United States. It's a felony to encourage them to refer them for work. Most people don't know those laws. 8 U.S.C. 1324 and 1325. The law is clear. It's a felony to hire them. We have good laws. We don't need immigration reform. We need enforcement. Deportation is not a bad word. It's what happens when you break into my country, or what should happen. It's just like I have put some wonderful people in jail. Mom and a dad for DUI, who have a wonderful family, but they got in the vehicle when they shouldn't. I separate them from their families. They go to jail. There's consequences for breaking the law, and we must stop apologizing for it. That's our duty. God bless you. Thank you for putting up with me. Again, go to my website, russellpearce.com, sign the petition. You can also contact me, send me a message, ask me anything you need to ask me, and I respond. I answer all those myself. So thank you, and God bless.